But I do want to talk about the Attorney General of the United States. His true nature is revealing itself. Eric Holder talks calmly and quietly, doesn't seem to offend. But Eric Holder is a dripping radical, dripping with contempt. Contempt for the legal system. And he has spent much of his career manipulating it and abusing it. And there's a reason why it's time to discuss this man at more length. It's because right now he is heading a posse, if you will, a mob action. As Ben Shapiro at Breitbart reports, yesterday afternoon the Justice Department appealed to civil rights groups and the general public across the country for tips on George Zimmerman in their pursuit of potential federal civil rights charges against the just acquitted defendant in the Martin case. The Justice Department actually went so far as to set up an email address to solicit the tips. The email address is slated to go operational by the end of the week. Barbara Arnwine, President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under the Law, this is a radical red organization, told the Orlando Sentinel that the Justice Department had held a Monday conference call, quote, calling on us to actively refer anyone who had any information, unquote, that would help build a case against Zimmerman. Quote, they said they would very aggressively investigate this case, unquote. According to Arnwine, the call began at 3:30 p.m. Eastern with Tom Perez, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights at the Justice Department, who's been nominated to be Secretary of Labor, who the Senate just agreed will have an up-and-down vote and get his confirmation, which I will discuss soon enough. And others on the line included representatives of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Several prosecutors joined the call as well. Arnwine listed off other groups represented on the call, including the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, the ACLU, and several so-called human relations groups. So like the old days, a posse is now out and about, trying to get Zimmerman, a man who just went through a criminal trial. Who is this Eric Holder? What do we know about this man? Well, you can look at his resume. Oh, he was a U.S. attorney. He was a judge. He was deputy attorney general. Now he's attorney general. Wow, what a swell resume. But there's more to the man than that. More to the man than that. You can do a little digging on your own as I did. You remember the pardons of the FALN terrorists? The pro-Puerto Rican independence terrorist group, the FALN? As Jonathan Adler wrote 4 years ago on the Volok website, the LA Times reports Eric Holder actively sought to blunt opposition to Bill Clinton's pardon of members of two pro-Puerto Rican independence terrorist groups. This is what they wrote. New interviews and an examination of previously undisclosed documents indicate that Holder played an active role in changing the position of the Justice Department on the commutations. Holder instructed his staff at Justice, at the Office of the Pardon Attorney, to effectively replace the department's original report recommending against any commutations, which had been sent to the White House in 1996, with one that favored clemency for at least half the prisoners, according to the interviews and the documents. He fired the pardon attorney who had been there for years and years and years under Republican and Democrat presidents. Republican and Democrat attorneys general. He had her removed. He put pressure on her. And he installed one of his political hacks in the slot. Holder did. The 16 members of the FALN, the Spanish acronym for Armed Forces of National Liberation, and the Los Macheteros have been convicted in Chicago and Hartford variously of bank robbery, possession of explosives, and participating in seditious conspiracy. Overall, the two groups have been linked by the FBI to more than 130 bombings, several armed robberies, 6 slayings, and hundreds of injuries. None of the 16 whose sentences were commuted had been convicted of murder, and most had already served lengthy prison terms. But they were part of the groups. And as anybody who knows, who watches TV for 13 seconds and watches these law enforcement shows, you don't have to pull the trigger to be guilty of murder if you're part of the conspiracy, if you're part of the circle of criminality. A spokesman for the Obama transition, remember this is January 2009, Nick Shapiro, confirmed that Holder asked for the options memo that preceded the clemency. George Terwilliger, who served as Deputy Attorney General under President George H.W. Bush, a very good man who I know personally, and was asked by the Obama transition team to comment, said that although he disagreed with the FALN clemency, he thought the conduct was appropriate, that is, Holder's, and he was wrong. When Clinton issued the commutations on August 11, 1999, the House and the Senate passed resolutions condemning them. Holder was called to testify on the case by the Senate Judiciary Committee, but, invoking Clinton's claim of executive privilege, declined to say whether the Justice Department had changed its position on commutations. Asked what happened after the 1996 report opposing any commutations, what happened to that report? He told the senators there were subsequent communications with the White House in the months after that recommendation. Actually, it was worse than that. Let me tell you what a conniving, radical liar we have as Attorney General. There is a piece in the American Thinker dated December 4, 2011 by Ronald Kolb. And he goes into it at length. And I cannot read the whole thing. But he explains how Holder set up this entire situation. In December 1996 and the months before Holder arrived, then pardon attorney Margaret Love had issued a report recommending against clemency for the FALN and their closely allied groups. The latter group, the machete wielders in English, was primarily based in Puerto Rico and had killed 6 there in a number of armed attacks. Holder was sworn in as Deputy Attorney General July 1897. In Holder's first full working day following Monday, pardon attorney staffer Susan Kuzma, who had previously served in the Public Integrity Office with Holder during the 1980s, sent Love a memo questioning her 1996 report. And this is the beginning of a process to put pressure on this career Justice Department official, Margaret Love, who I'd known when I was there, who was pretty liberal, as a matter of fact, but that didn't matter. She was a career official who knew her business, and she called these shots straight. And they kept pressuring her to change her memo to support commutation. And she didn't, and she wouldn't. And by November, Holder had fired her and replaced her with Roger Adams, who was then a member of his staff. And then Holder and Adams began meeting with advocates at clemency for the terrorist group. And then in 2009, just prior to Holder's confirmation before the Senate, the L.A. Times, as I just read, uncovered the documents. Now, his own appointee, this guy Adams, still had misgivings about all this. And he warned Holder's chief of staff about it. But Holder kept pressing. They came up with an options memo. And Holder picked the option. Clinton announced the offer of clemency to 12 members of the FALN, along with 4 of the macheteros. And the news stunned both victims of the FALN and many members of law enforcement. And it goes on. This is the Eric Holder who puts politics above safety, who puts politics above justice. They did this. They did this to pander to what they thought would be the support of another group, another ethnic group. You'll remember, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who were around and paying attention to it, how appalling this was. Holder would eventually leave the Justice Department when George W. Bush was elected, and he would go into his big law firm. And the big law firm, of which Holder was a senior partner, represented more terrorists at Guantanamo Bay than any other law firm. This is the man who heads the Justice Department. Partner at Covington and Burling in Washington, D.C., he was nominated to be Attorney General of the United States, and when he was nominated to be Attorney General of the United States, his law firm represented 17 Yemeni nationals and 1 Pakistani citizen held at Guantanamo Bay. And Covington and Burling's Gitmo bar roster, as Michelle Malkin wrote, has included some of the most radical detainee advocates. And this is the background of the man who is the Attorney General. But he's more than that. He's a crony. Even Richard Cohen, the liberal columnist for the Washington Compost back in 2008, he said, remember Mark Rich? He was a commodities trader who amassed both a fortune and some influential friends in the 70s and 80s. And along with his partner, Pincus Green, he was indicted in 1983 on 65 counts of tax evasion and related matters. Before he could be prosecuted, he fled to Switzerland. And he remained there, avoiding extradition and eventually arranging to be represented by Jack Quinn, who was a one-time top lawyer to the Clinton White House. In other words, a certified power broker. And Quinn did an end run around the Justice Department's pardon attorney, around the pardon office, and went straight to Eric Holder and the White House. And with a stroke of the pen, justice was not done. Holder was not just an integral part of the pardon process. He provided the White House with cover by offering his go-ahead recommendation. So Holder strongly promoted the pardon of Mark Rich, who died about a month ago, to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton wanting to pardon him because Mark Rich's ex-wife was at the time a major Democrat donor, and she has since left the country for other places. So you see all this that swirls around Holder. He is one foot in the radical, hard left, where he's comfortable dealing with people associated with and representing terrorists, domestic and foreign, and one foot in the other camp of the crony left-wing millionaires and billionaires who feed the Democrat Party and their candidates, and Eric Holder is there to do their bidding. He's in the worst place imaginable, at the head of the Department of Justice. And so now these groups come forward, and Sharpton and all the rest of them, and they demand Zimmerman's head. After we just had a trial. A kangaroo court, I might add. And the man is acquitted. And Monday, within 48 hours of the jury reaching its verdict, Holder and his people convene a meeting of left-wing groups, of advocacy groups, of political groups. FBI representatives are on the phone. Prosecutors are on the phone. Justice Department officials are on the phone, putting out the word to the posse. Find anything. We will hunt down any piece of information, anything we can find, to bring a federal cause of action against Zimmerman. Anything. And all of this is going on, and only one person is reporting it. Me! With our friends at Breitbart. Instead, I should sit here and do a Mickey Mouse show and play clips of some idiot on MSNBC or some idiot on CNN, two cable networks I can't even stand. We have a lawless, rogue Attorney General of the United States who serves a lawless, rogue President of the United States, who work with a lawless, rogue Senator from Nevada named Harry Reid in the United States Senate. This is no joke. This is extremely serious. When an individual, when a citizen goes through our justice system and comes out of it, despite all the best efforts of the state of Florida to destroy him, a jury saves the day. And now an Attorney General of the United States is unleashing everything and anything he possibly can to take down one citizen, the entire weight of the federal government, all of its resources, all of the groups that support this administration have been alerted. Dig it up, dig up anything, dig up something, and we'll go after him. Unbelievable, unbelievable.